day, as indeed all the cricket world remembers. One had not to be a cricketer oneself to appreciate his perfect command of pitch and break, his beautifully easy action, which never varied with the varying pace, his great ball on the leg stump, his dropping head ball, in a word, the infinite ingenuity of that versatile attack. It was no mere exhibition of athletic prowess. It was an intellectual treat, and one with a special significance in my eyes. I saw the affinity between the two things, saw it in that afternoon's tireless warfare against the flower of professional cricket. It was not that Raffles took many wickets for few runs. He was too fine a bowler to mind being hit, and time was short, and the wicket good. What I admired, and what I remember, was the combination of resource and cunning, of patience and precision, of headwork and handiwork, which made every over an artistic whole. It was all so characteristic of that other Raffles whom I alone knew.
"I felt like bowling this afternoon,"
he told me later in the hansom.
"With a pitch to help me I'd have done something big. As it is, 3 for 41, out of the 4 that fell, isn't so bad for a slow bowler on a plum wicket against those fellows. But I felt venomous. Nothing riles me more than being asked about for my cricket as though I were a pro myself."
"Then why on earth go?"
"To punish them. And because we shall be jolly hard up, Bunny, before the season's over."
"Ah," said I. "I thought it was that."
"Of course it was. It seems they're going to have the very devil of a week of it. Balls, dinner parties, swagger house party, general junketings, and obviously a house full of diamonds as well. Diamonds galore. As a general rule nothing would induce me to abuse my position as a guest. I've never done it, Bunny. But in this case we're engaged like the waiters and the band, and by heaven we'll take our toll. Let's have a quiet dinner somewhere and talk it over."
"It seems a rather vulgar sort of theft," I could not help saying, and to this, my single protest, Raffles instantly assented.
"It is a vulgar sort," said he, "but I can't help that. We're getting vulgarly hard up, and there's an end on it. Besides, these people deserve it, and can afford it. And don't you run away with the idea that all will be plain sailing. Nothing will be easier than getting some stuff, and nothing harder than avoiding all suspicion, as of course we must. We may come away with no more than a good working plan of the premises. Who knows? In any case, there's weeks of thinking in it for you and me."
But with those weeks I will not weary you further than by remarking that the thinking was done entirely by Raffles, who did not always trouble to communicate his thoughts to me. His reticence, however, was no longer an irritant. I began to accept it as a necessary convention of these little enterprises, and after our last adventure of the kind, more especially after its denouement, my trust in Raffles was much too solid to be shaken by a want of trust in me, which I still believe to have been more the instinct of the criminal than the judgment of the man. It was on Monday the 10th of August that we were due at Milchester Abbey, Dorset, and the beginning of the month found us cruising about that very county, with fly rods actually in our hands. The idea was that we should acquire at once a local reputation as decent fishermen, and some knowledge of the countryside, with a view to further and more deliberate operations in the event of an unprofitable week. There was another idea which Raffles kept to himself until he had got me down there. Then one day he produced a cricket ball in a meadow we were crossing, and threw me catches for an hour together. More hours he spent in bowling to me on the nearest green, and, if I was never a cricketer, at least I came nearer to being one by the end of that week than ever before or since. Incident began early on the Monday. We had sallied forth from a desolate little junction within quite a few miles of Milchester, had been caught in a shower, had run for shelter to a wayside inn. A florid, overdressed man was drinking in the parlour, and I could have sworn it was at the sight of him that Raffles recoiled on the threshold, and afterwards insisted on returning to the station through the rain. He assured me, however, that the odour of stale ale had almost knocked him down, and I had to make what I could of his speculative, downcast eyes and knitted brow. Milchester Abbey is a grey quadrangle pile, deep set in rich woody country, and twinkling with triple rows of quaint windows, every one of which seemed alight as we drove up just in time to dress for dinner. The carriage had whirled us under I know not how many triumphal arches in process of construction, and past the tents and flagpoles of a juicy-looking cricket field, on which Raffles undertook to bowl up to his reputation. But the chief signs of festival were within, where we found an enormous house-party assembled, including more persons of pomp, majesty, and dominion than I had ever encountered in one room before. I confess I felt overpowered. Our errand and my own presences combined to rob me of an address upon which I have sometimes plumed myself, and I have a grim recollection of my nervous relief when dinner was at last announced. I little knew what an ordeal it was to prove. I had taken in a much less formidable young lady than might have fallen to my lot. Indeed, I began by blessing my good fortune in this respect. Miss Melhuish was merely the rector's daughter, and she had only been asked to make an even number. She informed me of both facts before the soup reached us, and her subsequent conversation was characterized by the same engaging candor. It exposed what was little short of a mania for imparting information. I had simply to listen, to nod, and to be thankful. When I confessed to knowing very few of those present, even by sight, my entertaining companion proceeded to tell me who everybody was, beginning on my left and working conscientiously round to her right. This lasted quite a long time, and really interested me, but a great deal that followed did not, and obviously to recapture my unworthy attention, Miss Melhuish suddenly asked me, in a sensational whisper, whether I could keep a secret. I said I thought I might, whereupon another question followed, in still lower and more thrilling accents. "Are you afraid of burglars?" Burglars! I was roused at last. The word stabbed me. I repeated it in horrified query. "So I've found something to interest you at last," said Miss Melhuish in naïve triumph. "Yes, burglars! But don't speak so loud. It's supposed to be kept a great secret. I really oughtn't to tell you at all." "But what is there to tell?" I whispered with satisfactory impatience. "You promise not to speak of it?" "Of course." "Well, then, there are burglars in the neighborhood." "Have they committed any robberies?" "Not yet." "Then how do you know?" "They've been seen in the district. 2 well-known London thieves." 2! I looked at Raffles. I had done so often during the evening, envying him his high spirits, his iron nerve, his buoyant wit, his perfect ease and self-possession. But now I pitied him. Through all my own terror and consternation, I pitied him as he sat eating and drinking, and laughing and talking, without a cloud of fear or of embarrassment on his handsome, taking, dare-devil face. I caught up my champagne and emptied the glass. "Who has seen them?" I then asked calmly. "A detective. They were traced down from town a few days ago. They are believed to have designs on the Abbey." "But why aren't they run in?" "Exactly what I asked papa on the way here this evening. He says there is no warrant out against the men at present, and all that can be done is to watch their movements." "Oh, so they are being watched?" "Yes, by a detective who is down here on purpose. And I heard Lord Amersteth tell papa that they have been seen this afternoon at Warbeck Junction." The very place where Raffles and I had been caught in the rain. Our stampede from the inn was now explained. On the other hand, I was no longer to be taken by surprise by anything that my companion might have to tell me, and I succeeded in looking her in the face with a smile. "This is really quite exciting, Miss Melhuish," said I. "May I ask how you come to know so much about it?" "It's papa," was the confidential reply. "Lord Amersteth consulted him, and he consulted me. But for goodness' sake don't let it get about. I can't think what tempted me to tell you." "You may trust me, Miss Melhuish. But aren't you frightened?" Miss Melhuish giggled. "Not a bit. They won't come to the rectory. There's nothing for them there. But look round the table.